You know, since the start of this series, I really had no idea how to approach this final episode. Should it be happy, sad, maybe angry? To be honest, as of filming this, I still really have no clue. So, let's recap real quick. We've talked about what Racing Rivals was like at the beginning and how it eventually rose to be one of the most popular mobile racing games of all time. We've also talked about how the game unfortunately fell from grace due to some pretty poor decisions and the 6.0 update not being all that great. But almost everyone agrees what the worst update Racing Rivals ever got is. And so, in this final episode of the story of Racing Rivals, we'll be taking a look at the 7.0 update and seeing if it was really that bad. In any way, hopefully you guys enjoy. "7.0. Those words are infamous to anyone who is at least somewhat familiar with Racing Rivals, but why? Was there ever a chance of this update working out? Well, to understand why 7.0 happened, we need context, which is why we went into depth about what went wrong with the game in part 3, which I would really recommend checking out, just so you guys know why the game was in shambles. Well, to summarize, in early 2018 there weren't really any exciting new updates. Players were leaving Racing Rivals in droves, including me, and the economy, to put it mildly, was fucked. A great sign of that was that in the Christmas event of 2017, players could win Evo 8 Race Editions, Cobra Jets and Civic Si R East for free, and those were some of the only few cars that were still considered valuable. I think that was a pretty clear sign that the developers abandoned the idea of Racing Rivals as we knew it, but any questions were gone on the 14th of February of 2018 with the massive announcement of the 7.0 update. Along with the announcement, the developers also provided an FAQ, some frequently asked questions, so let's go over them to see what was new about the 7.0 update. What's happening to my existing cars? Well, that's kind of a weird question. Shouldn't they just stay exactly where they are? No, they'll be moved into the legacy garage where you won't be able to pink slip them, tune them, customize them or change them in pretty much any way. Huh. Okay, well that is a very bold decision, but what about boosts? Okay, looks like the boosts will be removed as well. That kinda makes sense, it wasn't a feature that was really loved by anyone. Gems will also transfer over, which is at least something, but what about Racing Rivals cash, you know, the main currency? Okay, RLC does transfer over if you buy it from the game. So that's irrelevant, since a million RLC costs $100 to the game and 25 cents on the black market. What happens otherwise? Oh, it's gone, like it never existed. Just for good measure, all inventory items and blueprints will also be removed as well, but long-time players will get some legacy rewards. Okay, cool, I'm sure that they will be worth the years of cards and progress that will be erased. So, as you would imagine, the community was beyond pissed off, at least the people that didn't instantly quit the game, but for the record, I do understand why the developers would do something as drastic as this, because there was just no coming back from the destroyed economy that Racing Rivals had. There was just no way that Racing Rivals could continue existing with the rapidly decreasing player base, and even the players who remained, they didn't buy anything apart from maybe gems from the game itself because, well, everything on the black market was so cheap and the game just wasn't making enough money. And that was the mindset that I had when I initially read those patch notes. I obviously wasn't very happy about everyone losing their stuff, but I was at least somewhat pleased that the developers decided to not just pull the plug on Racing Rivals. I was kind of excited about the 7.0 update. At the time, I got a lot of shit for saying that out loud, but a few weeks ago I did make a poll asking you guys whether I should make a fair, non-biased, well, mostly non-biased review about the 7.0 update, and you guys said yes. So today, almost 4 years after the update came out, we'll be taking a look at the 7.0 update and seeing if it was ever any good to begin with. For all intents and purposes, I don't think that 7.0 was a continuation of the Racing Rivals timeline. I mean, they even changed the name. No longer was the game called Racing Rivals, it was now called Racing Rivals World Tour. And it did feel like a different game, and that's what turned off the majority of the players, in case locking up all of their cars and erasing their cache wasn't enough. The 7.0 update was released on June 12th of 2018, and you guys might be thinking, wait, if the update was announced in February, what could the players do for those 4 months in between? Well, there was a lot of talk about the legacy events that would be going on in 7.0. So a lot of players spent those few months tuning cars from different brands and eras, hoping that their grind would eventually be worth the effort. Searching for footage for this video, I found a lot of people that were collecting and tuning their cars non-stop for the updates, since when 7.0 dropped, you wouldn't be able to tune them anymore. I'm sad to say that legacy events turned out to be completely underwhelming. Now obviously the majority of players would not be okay with their progress being pretty much reset, but perhaps if the release of the update went down without any problems, the game still maybe had a chance. I'll let you guys take a guess at how the 7.0 release went. A. 7.0 released without any problems whatsoever. B. 7.0 kinda released, but only like 10 people were allowed to get onto the game and the rest of the players only got an error screen and 7.0 instantly became a meme. Or C. I don't even have anything prepared, you guys know this bill already. So the 7.0 release was a disaster, but a few days later, finally us players were able to finally get onto the game and see what the new Racing Rivals was like. The returning players did get a bunch of legacy rewards like exclusive paint, rims, and even a few cars, plus the one thing that did carry over was the level and your progress in the campaign, so you did end up getting a few cars. The devs did talk a lot about how the legacy rewards would be great, and we did get cars like the Viper ACR, the Nismo GT3 and the M3 GT2 for free, but the problem with that is that really only the people who played Racing Rivals before 7.0 played the new version, and so almost everyone had those cars instantly, putting the economy in jeopardy, yeah, almost instantly. But okay, that's enough shit talking. For a few minutes, we'll try to be unbiased and see if 7.0 could ever work on its own. First off, the garage. I have to say it looked much better than before because it wasn't as dark anymore. The UI was also completely different, but overall, not a bad change, and props to them for keeping the test drive feature. Another big change was the world map, which to be honest looked a whole lot better than before and would be pretty cool once it would be filled with different events, but I do think they could have done more with it because a massive chunk of the globe was completely empty. The upgrade menus in garages stayed pretty much the same though, although car customization was almost non-existent. You couldn't even buy rims or paint from the garage anymore, you had to open crates. Let's move on to cars in 7.0. Well, obviously there were a lot less different cars in 7.0 because the previous version had almost 5 years worth of car releases, but 7.0 did actually have some new cars like the Mitsubishi 3000 GT and the Porsche 959, which were really cool. All cars drove differently than on the older versions, and the lobby ratings and car classes themselves were changed. The Pagani Zonda R, for example, now maxed out at 1674 and was considerably slower than before when it maxed out at 1683, just like most cars, and the R3 class was cut altogether. R2 class still existed, but they were insanely rare. Also, the cars now had different rarity tiers, but I'm not really sure if they had any impact other than, well, flexing. The racing itself was similar to before, but like I said, all the cars drove differently, and after years of getting used to the way certain cars drove, most people just weren't very excited about having to learn all of that again. The one thing that I was really excited about though was progressing from the bottom to the top once again. Going from the slowest car classes to the highest. The progress in 7.0 would obviously be much slower, but like they say, it's about the journey, not the destination. There would be some pink slipping going on, but only with the slowest cars. Unfortunately, the thing that I quite quickly realized is that the economy took a massive 180 with 7.0. Everything was worthless in the game before, and everything was simply too expensive now to make the basic elements of the game fun, like pink slipping. And it wasn't necessarily only about losing your car, but also all of the money that you put into it to max it out. Everyone was broke, and if you just lost the car you spent a few days maxing out, you could be quitting the game entirely because the grind wasn't all that fun, and that was because the community was much smaller than before. Most people quit before 7.0, some quickly after, and there were almost no new players coming to the game, and the black market was mostly dead. Another major change was the introduction of the event tickets. Now, previously you could race as much as you wanted to, but if your car was upgraded, you would get engine damage and your car would be slower. In 7.0 though, once you ran out of tickets, you couldn't even enter events anymore. You either had to wait for the tickets to refill or buy them, and in my opinion that was one of the worst changes because you couldn't play as much as you wanted to, which was one of the best things about Racing Rivals previously. There was one completely new aspect of Racing Rivals though, which had a lot of effort put into it. The collections. You would get all your paints, rims and cars from here, and yes, the car dealership didn't exist in 7.0 anymore. In collections you had a lot of different objectives where you would get some pretty amazing prizes, and this is in fact one of the few changes that I did really like. So, clearly there were some massive changes with the 7.0 update, but over the course of the next few months after the release of the update there were plenty more changes, so let's go over them and see if those were any good. Roughly a week after the 7.0 launch we got the Tuner Challenge, which was kind of a new take on the Racer Showdown. Basically you would tune your car to a certain rating and then race against opponents, and by winning you would progress to the higher and higher ranks and getting some pretty cool prizes in the process. Now overall I really liked the Tuner Challenge, but there was one major drawback compared to Racer Showdown. When you raced in the Tuner Challenge you found an opponent instantly in a menu. You had no choice to select a different opponent, which I guess did stop cheating, but you never actually jumped in a lobby and talked to any other players. And that communication is what actually made Racing Rivals that great. You know, you could just hop into a random lobby and shit talk with a random person, or maybe become best friends with them. Now, aside from that, I actually did like the Tuner Challenge, but it just felt a little bit empty. Another feature that was eventually released that I really liked was the car decks. In it you could see every single car released in 7.0 and how many players actually owned those specific cars. Now, as a dude who loves statistics, this was a fantastic feature because you could finally get a sense of how rare certain cars actually were. You could also buy certain cars from the car decks, so it kinda acted like a car dealership. Along with the release of the car decks, we also got the much awaited return of the revamped Turf Wars. These were quite similar to the Tuner Challenge, as the game would once again automatically select opponents for you, taking a large chunk of the banter which made the game fun away from turfing. Instead of the usual turf car rewards, turfing would award you trophies which you could then redeem for one of multiple different versions of the turf cars. Now, that wasn't necessarily a bad change, but it did take something away from turfing, as you never really had a scenario anymore where you and your team had to get on the game just before the event ended and seriously push for a top 25 place to get a more special version of that week's turf car. It did feel a lot more satisfying to earn a car than some trophies with which you could then redeem a car, but that's just my opinion, which just happens to be the general consensus, but oh well. In the late August of 2018, the game celebrated its 5th birthday and everyone got a free Nissan Skyline R34 with a pretty awesome wrap, as well as some cool customization items. Now, spoilers, there weren't exactly many seasonal events in 7.0 for reasons that will become apparent very soon, but there was a very cool one for Halloween of 2018. All players could claim a free Plymouth satellite and then complete objectives and earn rewards that you could then redeem to upgrade the satellite to the final demonic version. This event did in fact show that the developers did still care about the game just a little bit, because all the different versions of the satellite that you could get, they were customized and they were actually pretty cool. But do you guys remember the card decks that I mentioned earlier? Well, like I said, the card decks did allow players to see how much percentage of all the players own specific cards, and the Plymouth satellite was given to absolutely everyone for free. Everyone. And, well, as it turns out, despite of that, with all the versions of the car combined, only 15% of all the players owned the satellite, with less than 1% of all the players actually completing the event. Yeah, it was only a matter of time now. Sure enough, not even a month later, on the 22nd of November of 2018, the inevitable post was made on the Racing Rivals Facebook page. Racing Rivals would be shutting down on March 31st of 2019. But before we talk about that, let's talk about 7.0. Now, I did a lot of research for this video, because if I was gonna give 7.0 an honest review, I was gonna do it right. And, well, here's the main question. Was 7.0 really that bad? No, not really. The game was okay, but it never stood a chance. Now, obviously 7.0 wasn't nearly as good as 5.3 or something, but still, everyone got really pissed as soon as they found out all their progress was going to be wiped, and no matter what the developers did, most of those people would never come back, and the game never got a lot of new players after 7.0. The community was completely destroyed, and I could barely find any videos on 7.0 for this video. I can't believe I'm gonna say this after years of bashing 7.0, but I think that the developers, for the most part, did a decent job. There were a lot of good changes that were completely overshadowed by the legacy garage, justifiably so. For example, the new garage and the map looked pretty awesome. I actually really loved the collection system, the card decks was fantastic, and the Halloween event was really cool. 7.0 was honestly better than I remembered, but ultimately, all the good changes didn't matter, because this game, the 7.0 update, it was always gonna fail. Now, obviously, 7.0 still had a lot of misses, and I'm not only talking about the legacy garage, but I think that if 7.0 never released and, well, was released now, a couple of years after Racing Rivals shut down as like Racing Rivals 2, honestly, I think it could have worked. Now, for it to work, obviously, they would have to make quite a bit of changes. For example, get rid of that god-awful ticket system, bring back proper multiplayer lobbies, and make paint and rims purchasable from the game, amongst many other things, but obviously, that's never gonna happen. When the shutdown announcement was made, no one was surprised. It was less than 6 months after the release of the 7.0 update, but no one really played the game anymore. The developers were nice enough to give everyone some cool perks, since there were still a couple of months until the servers would close, like cheap crates and quicker upgrades. The perks were nice, but ultimately they didn't really matter, because barely anyone played Rivals before the announcement, and after it, there was really no point. That would end up being the last update that Racing Rivals ever got. As months went by and the 31st of March was quickly approaching, me and so many others, we just didn't know how to feel about the game shutting down. I mean, we all knew it was coming for a long time, but this current version of the game was so much different than the game we fell in love with. Nonetheless, in the days before the shutdown, a lot of different posts and YouTube videos were made, saying goodbye to Rivals for one final time. I did one as well, but I also decided to host a live stream of the last few hours of the game. Starting up the live stream, it was immediately an emotional roller coaster. Now, views for Racing Rivals were significantly down since the game hit its peak, but a lot of people decided to stop by for one last time. And there were a lot of familiar names in the chat, and one of them was no other than Pigpen, the one and only, and he eventually joined in on a Skype call and shared some of his amazing stories and talked about the player council. Not too long after, the Skype call was absolutely packed with people like iPolitely, Edward Lopez 2YT and NSGS, and we didn't even race on the game anymore, we just talked about our favorite memories from the game, and honestly, I think that perfectly sums up Racing Rivals. The game back in the day was absolutely fantastic, but what ultimately made Racing Rivals was the community, and once people started leaving, the game stopped being as great as it once was. Now 7.0 had some pretty big issues, but if the community was as great and big as it once was, who knows? As the 31st of March of 2019 drew to a close, we counted down the final few seconds of Racing Rivals, but to our surprise, nothing happened. I mean, some people were sure that it was all an April Fool's prank, but it wasn't. Racing Rivals shut down a few hours later on April 1st of 2019. But that stream, it was truly something special. We had fun, we talked, we shared memories of Racing Rivals, and none of us were all really that sad. I mean, we knew that Racing Rivals had completed its life cycle, and what we were playing at that moment was only a shell of a once fantastic game, but it was still an end of an era. I mean, none of us were sad about the game shutting down, we were sad because we knew it was the last time that most of us would race each other. And then, that was it. Racing Rivals was dead. But what killed it? When I started this project almost 2 years ago, I honestly had no idea, but after talking with a lot of you guys and interviewing Austin Ewan, the former product manager of Rivals, we finally have an answer. The thing that ultimately killed Racing Rivals is mismanagement. The original developer team made Racing Rivals to be a high stakes, a simple yet a complex mobile racing game, but when the community found it, they made it into so much more. The pink slip in the black market, the turf wars and everything else made Racing Rivals my personal favorite game of all time. Will we ever get a sequel to Racing Rivals? Well, at the time of recording, the original company behind Racing Rivals is currently working on a new drag racing game called Auto Legends. Honestly, I'm very excited about it, but we are yet to see if the game is gonna bring people together in the same way that Rivals did. Ultimately, the story of Racing Rivals is a mixed one. The game started off slow, but absolutely blew up and, well, unfortunately went into a slow but sure downward spiral as glue took over. But overall, this game completely changed my life and I am very happy that I stuck around to the end. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to say, but if you guys don't want to hear an emotional monologue, feel free to click off now. Also, I found a very old list of some of the people who donated to me on Rivals back in the day, so here are some long overdue shoutouts. You know, not a day goes by when I don't think about Racing Rivals, and in a way, I made this series, the story of Racing Rivals, for me, as closure, because this game does not deserve to be forgotten ever, and for years now I've been trying to find a game that would make me feel the same way that Racing Rivals made me feel back in the day, but honestly, I probably never will. I played Rivals during some of my most impressionable years of my life. When I started playing, I was a quiet kid, super antisocial, but interacting with other players in the game and outside of it completely changed me. And then, of course, there were some really bizarre events that happened to me because of Rivals, and I ended up losing a lot of weight. I started selling cars on the game and earning more money than I make at my job now, and I became a lot more social. I can't even imagine what my life would be like if I never played Rivals. All because of a mobile racing game. Racing Rivals completely changed my life, and I never knew what my purpose in life was, but during that period in 2015 and 2016, I knew I wanted to be a YouTuber. I wanted to make videos. I wanted to be the center of a community, and at the time it looked promising. And honestly, that's one of the things that I miss the most, you know, the sense of having a purpose in life, to have dreams that are achievable. And I know just how cheesy this monologue is, but this is the way I feel, and I always felt like I let you guys and myself down when I stopped uploading content in 2017, when I stopped playing Rivals, because I had dreams that were achievable, but ultimately, you know, I didn't work on it, and this channel fell into obscurity. You know, for a while I wanted the series to be the final thing that I would ever upload onto YouTube and have this be my legacy, but, you know, making these videos, editing them, and then seeing the very positive reception from you guys, it made me find my sense of purpose again. So no, I'm not stopping. I love making videos, and yeah. So for the final few clips, the microphone decided to act up, so I'm just gonna hold this with my hands. Very professional up in here, but what I wanted to say is that hopefully the story of Racing Rivals made you relive some of your favorite memories from this fantastic game. And like I said in the Cartown video, the game is gone forever, but ultimately what matters is that, you know, the memories from the game and the people we met from the game stay with us. Thank you guys so much for watching the story of Racing Rivals until the very end. This is by far the most effort and time I ever put into a video series, but it's also the one that I'm the most proud of, and this is exactly the type of content that I want to make in the future. So I would really appreciate it if you guys subscribed if you want to see more of this. I'm not sure what my next video is gonna be about, but hey, you guys can leave your suggestions in the comment section down below. Make sure to like the video if you liked, and yeah, that's about it. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care.